we're going to, the title, guys, is So You Want to Own an Airbnb, hosted by Alan Johnson. Obviously, that's me, CEO, founder of the AJ Team, been in real estate for 20 years, been an investor for 20 years. And really feel really fortunate to call Willie a friend and a partner, and someone that I've known for a very long time. So Willie is the CEO of Ram Construction and Property Management, which is a Class A contractor in Virginia, and a full-time property manager. You property manage long-term rentals, and you property manage short-term rentals as well, right, Will?
That is correct.
All right, cool. And we'll get into that in a second. So Willie, your story is phenomenal. So can you tell us a little bit about your story, your personal story?
All right. So just quick, brief background. Born in Washington, D.C., grew up here in the Northern Virginia area. Went to undergrad, Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. Played basketball up there, which is how Alan and I met playing basketball. And I started out my career in IT and business management. So I spent the first 17 years of my career doing IT, supporting the federal government as a government contractor. And I'll turn my camera on now. I think you got it blocked on my camera, so I'll keep talking. But so I'm sorry.
I'll get you straight. Keep talking.
Okay, so started out in government contracting, managing large-scale IT projects, and throughout that time, slowly acquiring investment properties and becoming more of a DIY, and which has kind of led into renovations of properties, which led to further investments, which led to construction company. So it's been an evolution, as that sideline career got to a point where it actually took over, and I left the corporate world to start my own thing and focus on real estate investment, construction, and property management. So in short, that's kind of my story, how I kind of ran a different lane and then crossed into one that I'm really enjoying.
That's pretty awesome. So tell me this, Willie. I know you. You were a client before you became a partner, right? And you were doing pretty well. Man, you were like one of the youngest VPs at Lockheed. Is that right?
Yeah. I would say one of the youngest VPs in a corporation of 120,000 folks. So doing really well. And so making a move to do your own thing when, for all intents and purposes, things were going really well, was a big leap. So definitely wasn't faint at heart to make that happen, but I haven't looked back yet.
And we're going to get into the Airbnbs, but I really always like to get these meetings started off with the mindset. What was the mindset around making that shift? You obviously had wife, you had kids. Like, how did you prepare yourself? Like, what were some steps that you made for you to be able to step from a very well-paid position into full-time real estate?
It took a lot of thought, some math, and really it takes into account how you see your own personal risk profile. I would say I'm a prudent risk taker. And so leaving a comfortable career and lifestyle, as I looked at my investment properties and the passive income that it generated, I first wanted to make sure, it says, hey, if everything hits the fan, the world burns down, will I still keep my home and we'll still eat? And so I got my investment properties to a point where I could cover, my home and feed the kids, so we wouldn't have to worry about that piece. And if I could do that, then I felt comfortable making the leap, and then getting some multifamily properties kind of pushed that over the edge where, as I took the opportunity to take a buyout from the corporate world, that allowed me to open up that multifamily world and some additional options from investment, to the point where I was comfortable enough to kind of hedge the bet on the risk of the income that I was leaving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was that conversation like with your wife?
It was an evolving conversation. So she could see my interest level shifting. to what I was more passionate about. And so she couldn't deny that aspect. And then when I kind of laid out the math, it says, all right, worst case, you know, A through D is covered. You don't have to worry about that. And then, hey, there may be some, you know, some shortfalls of pickup in the near term, but the long-term upside was even better. And so she's even more risk averse than I am. So it took some convincing to come around that. And I'm probably still proving that to her, but but she's come around, and I think, you know, we've been better off for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So quick question. When did you start acquiring rental properties? Like, where in your life cycle did you start acquiring rental properties? Tell me about the first couple. How did those go?
So I bought my first home when I was 26. The market was pretty hot, and so I pulled some equity out to buy my first investment property in 2004.
Was that in Philly?
Yes.
Okay.
And so yes, I bought a property in Philadelphia where I did not live, which I would not advise most people to do unless you had a couple of things in place. It happened where I was able to get the property before. It was a high-rise apartment that was converting to condos. So I was able to get in before it went public. So I was able to get it at a good price, but also because of the type of building, all of the management of the building, they had staff there to handle that. So it required very little of me to be there and be present to actually run and manage that property. So it has turned out to be a good thing in the long run.
That's dope. And then tell me, when you started acquiring properties here, what did that look like?
The first rental property I bought here was in 2009, and that, I'm sorry. Well, I bought my first foreclosure in 2009. And that one I turned into a rental property in Woodbridge and in Lake Ridge, which it needed some renovation work. And so my wife and I, we did it, you know, most of it ourselves. And that was actually the last time I saw her help me on the project. And then actually, believe it or not, I have the same tenant in that house since 2009.
Oh, no, that's crazy. So who sold you that property?
Alan Johnson of the AJ Team led me to that gym.
And here's the crazy thing about that story. Willie never saw the property before he made an offer on it.
How much I trust you, Al.
You did. Yes, you obviously did trust me. And that speaks to a little bit about what I talk about in the book, is that you got to build your team, right? 50 things your real estate agent should tell you, but probably won't. I think there are a couple of stories that I learned with Willie, and Willie learned with me, was that I was already buying a couple of investment properties. So we had conversations about what I was doing, and Willie was really quite frank. Like, if you run across something like that, I want to buy it, right? And, you know, as an agent, you know, if I'm going to go buy something myself, then I got to know if I'm going to pivot it to someone else that they're serious, and that both of us can't miss out on the opportunity, right? One of us got to get it, right? So, you know, back in the foreclosure, you know, in the foreclosures, as much as people say the market was slow, people were still buying a lot of properties, and things were still selling rather quickly because they were so cheap. And all you guys are out there. We got some agents that are on the call. We got some clients that are on the call. It's very important that your agent knows what you want, and that the agent trusts that when they throw you a deal, that you're going to bite, right? Because the problem is that we only have so much bandwidth. So if you pump fake, and I got a couple of basketball players on here, if you pump fake a couple times, I'm not jumping the next time, right? I'm not going to jump because I can't jump, because it's an opportunity that I could have bought or passed it on to someone else that was serious. So it's okay for you to start engaging your agent about what you want, but make sure when you really got them out there looking, you are dead serious, right? Because when the opportunities come, you don't have time to look most of the time at good opportunities. You don't have time to overanalyze, right? So, all right, cool. So how many long-term investment properties did you buy before you bought your first short-term rental?
I bought 10.
Damn. How many of those, did we sell you almost all those?
More than half.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know we sold you that many. That's wow. And you still own all those?
I do actually, yes.
That's awesome. And when did you start making the shift towards, where did even short-term rentals even come into your thought process?
Well, it was interesting when my wife and I she was pregnant with our third kid. Her parents wanted to come down and stay with us or stay in the area, but didn't want to stay with us in our house the whole time. And so we started looking for furnished rentals. They wanted a 2-bedroom or 2-bath or place, and they were hard to find. And the ones we did find, the price on them was astronomical. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, this is a whole other market here that it's been there, but I hadn't tapped into it and, didn't have a need or wasn't aware of it. And so that kind of got me in the mindset of, hey, if there's an opportunity to create a furnished rental or short-term rental, there's some money to be made there above and beyond what we see in the long-term rental game. And so I think it was, within 2 years, a year and a half from that time frame, we were lucky enough to acquire a multi-family building. And the game plan for that, as you know, was to be a long-term rental. And, we kind of hedged that whole investment based on a long-term rental game plan. But we have 4 units available, and we decided, hey, let's try 2 of them and furnish it, see what happens, based on, what I had done some research on. And it happened, and I think it was October, we had the units ready. And I said, let's just do it for 2 months, October, December, and, relatively slow period. It's getting cold here. And I remember listing the 2 units, it was close to midnight one night. And in reality, we still had some things to do. I still had to mount some TVs, put up some window dressings, etc. And by the time I woke up, we had 3 bookings, and I was like, "Oh crap!" And so that kind of got the fuel going even more. And it actually ended up where those 2 months were completely booked. And then we decided, hey, let's try the other 2 units, and we ended up furnishing all 4 and haven't looked back.
Right, that's what's up. Willie, do you mind if I share the link for all of your units in the chat so people can take a peek at it?
No, I'd be happy to.
All right, cool. I'm gonna share this in the chat, guys. You own currently 9 Airbnbs. Guys, I'm sorry, let me make sure I do this real quick. So I'm sending this to everyone. I'm putting the link for all of his Airbnbs in the chat. You own 9 Airbnbs. 8 of them in Arlington, and 1 of them in Old Town Alexandria. I'm seeing here you got 1,400 reviews. 1,400 reviews. That's crazy, right? So the question that I have for you is, and guys, I'll keep going through these pictures while he's talking. There's a big difference between owning a vacation rental and managing a vacation rental, right? So can we talk a little bit about owning a vacation rental? Because I remember what these buildings look like. And if you guys were around the AJ team, we did a seminar where we walked through these buildings. They were gutted. And, the renovation that he had to do was very different than the renovation that he would have had to do if he was renting it out as a long-term rental, right? So can you talk a little bit about just some of the nuances of owning, right? And then also some of the nuances of we'll get to the nuances of managing here in a second.
Okay, so you mean some of the nuances of owning a multifamily, or?
Yeah, just the nuances, like how much did you put down, like, how much rent, when you went in to look at the property, what were some of your mindsets around things? So this is a 4-unit, guys, so 2 upstairs and 2 down here at the bottom, and he owns 2 buildings side by side in Arlington, side by side. So yeah, talk a little bit about just ownership, and how did you make yourself financially ready to be able to buy properties like this? If there were people out there who were thinking about investing in somewhere like this, what would they need to think about?
I think the financing obviously is the first hurdle to get over for anyone to acquire any investment property, Airbnb or long-term. So having those avenues already set up to a point where you can take down a property quickly, always a benefit. But to take down a property that requires an extensive renovation, the ideal approach is multiple ways to do it, but the way we did it was to have our down payment, which is typically your investor, it's going to be 20 to 25%. There's no way around that. And to finance it through a construction loan so that the renovations could be financed back into the property. So when everything is done and the property is reappraised at a higher value, all the construction cost is all wrapped in there. And the real math is to make sure that the rents that you bring in can cover all of the financing that went into purchasing the property and to rehab the property.
Right. Cool. So guys, when the bank, even though you're going to do an Airbnb, the bank is going to do their financing based off of a long-term rental, right? They're not going to look at what you make from the Airbnb as what income they're going to approve you for. They're going to look at these rentals and say, okay, this rental right here, even though Willie can net, maybe $3,500 a month from this, if he were to rent this out, he would only be able to rent it out for $2,600 a month. So the bank's going to base it off of the long-term rental of the property, right? So the bank could care less. In fact, you probably don't even want to tell the bank that you're going to Airbnb, right? Because if you do and you have no experience, it ain't going to work, right? They're not going to finance you. You did a really good job here, brother. Really good job with these. You guys like these? Like these designs? Put in the chat if you like these designs. These are good. These are really nice. So you had your money prepared. You had 20%. You had a relationship with the bank that we introduced you to probably like a year beforehand, right?
Yeah, at least.
He was already talking to the bank. We had the banker starting to look at his financials, looking at his tax returns, looking at his income, looking at all those types of things, because we knew that if we focused on it, it was going to come, right? And I will tell you how I got this. How I got this was off of a handwritten letter. All right, so this property we sold as well. It was a handwritten letter. It was one of those things that, he was a prepared client. He was a prepared client, and we knew that we were going to pass this on to someone who was very prepared. Willie, talk to me about renovations. You are a Class A contractor. So guys, let me go ahead and plug this real quick. Willie is a Class A contractor in the state of Virginia. He totally renovated these properties. He is someone that we've used pretty extensively with our clients and with our major projects, our flips and things like that. He is a wonderful resource. He is full-time. This is the only thing he does. He is not in the IT world anymore. So his information is going to be here at the end. And I encourage you, if you're going to do any major renovations, make sure you reach out to Willie first. So Willie, tell me about renovations. How long did it take? What was the initial budget? What did your budget end up being? Not talking about any furnishings. We'll get to that. But what did all that end up costing you?
Actually, so for a unit building like this, we budgeted, I think, $225,000, which includes the individual units, but some of the common elements like windows, roof, the common stairwell, and some of the structural utilities that are required to make each unit independent. We spent about $250,000. And most of that is associated with, now you have a multifamily, there's code change requirements. And so for simple sheetrock, you're now using fire rated sheetrock. You have fire rated doors. So everything from a material standpoint goes up a little bit in terms of creating that fire break between each of the units there. So understanding the zoning requirements around, residential versus commercial property and the requirements thereof, can shift the cost factor a bit. And so that kind of, accounted for that delta there. So we spent, probably, altogether probably $90,000 per unit. I'm sorry, 60,000 per unit to get these all done. And obviously the furnishing is another expense that the bank won't finance. So you got to account for what it will take to furnish that place in a manner that you would want anyone to stay in.
Got it.
Stress that.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Got it. So stress it. Like, why, let's talk about furnishings, right? How much did it cost? How did you do that? Like, what lessons did you learn through the process of furnishing these places?
It's not that easy. For those who like to shop, and granted, we had some help. We had a very good friend, Keisha, help design and help us do a lot of the shopping here. And I've done some of it, and I realized that's a lot of work. That's just as much work as getting building materials, and to make it all work together is not an easy feat. So we probably spent around $7,500 per unit to furnish them. And what you got to keep in mind, the more active your rental, the more turnover required, the more use and abuse your furniture and furnishings will go through. So you definitely got a plan to replace those things more often than you would at your home.
Okay, I got it.
People are rough.
I got it. And we're going to get to some crazy stories. So Willie and I were on the phone talking about some crazy stories. Guys, any questions that you have, go ahead and put it in the chat so we can make sure that we got your questions answered. Tell me a little bit about management, Willie. So, everybody wants to own one of these properties, but we know that the stepchild of real estate is property management. Like it's hard to find a property manager for a reason, guys, right? I get people who call me for recommendations all the time, and property management is arguably one of the hardest components of real estate, right? So tell me a little bit about like short-term rental, property management, give people some tips. What have you learned?
So obviously these, as you saw, these properties are listed on Airbnb. The great thing about Airbnb, gives you a platform that you can reach many folks who are interested in finding a short-term rental. So it helps lower the advertising burden, but the management burden of day-to-day operations can be as hectic or as little as you want. So you have the ability, if you have your own Airbnb, you can set the calendar for how often you want to rent out your property in a short-term manner. So it could be a week, it could be a seasonal, or it can be all year long. We've chosen all year long. So with that comes a lot of turnover. So an average month in the summertime or a high travel season, we average about 60 turnovers a month. And so
Per building?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or no, across the two buildings.
Okay, got it.
Across the two buildings. So about 30 each. And so that's a lot of turnover. That's a lot of wear and tear. That's a lot of cleaning. And you've got to reset this place at every turnover like it was new. And we do that in a 4-hour window. So people check out at 11, by 3. Luckily, we have another group coming back in. So everything resets. And, it could be multiple units a day. So it's the juggling act there of making sure, as far as the guests can see, they didn't see that how the prior guests left the place in shambles, and we try to reset it and make it look like, it never happened. So that requires some magic sometimes.
I got you. So when people are thinking about turnover, can someone part-time if someone was like, hey, I just want to buy a building, and I want to manage it myself, would you recommend they hire a team, someone like you to do it? Or would you recommend that they try it on their own first?
I would tell that individual, you have to decide how committed you want to be to managing it the right way, because as I said before, you can decide how often you want to do it. If you're going to do it seasonal or here and there, yeah, it should be fairly easy for you to manage that. If you're going to do it at a full-time pace in a manner which would generate you 1.5 to 200% return over a long-term rental, if that's your goal, then you might want to look at having someone else manage it. And you would actually probably end up saving more, even though it seemed like it costs more, you would save more because you will be generating more income. And that, because every day it's vacant, it's revenue that you're losing, and we'll be focused on making sure that you maximize that month-to-month or nightly income.
I got you. So tell me this, what, how do you get 1,400 5-star reviews, right? I like, how do you do that? I mean, I'm just looking at the sheer numbers, not 1 out of 100 is going to be unhappy. Like, how do you
Oh, yeah.
handle that?
Yeah. No, you're going to get some people are people, and you're going to get every slice of society coming through the ranks here. So I've seen it all. I've seen the ones that are very easy to please, and the ones that are so high maintenance you can't do anything to please them. But to get that, a lot of these reviews and making people feel good about it. One, when they walk in, it looks like the pictures, and so they feel like, yep, I got what I expected. And two, I think the interaction that I have with them as they're booking their reservation or they have questions, I'm very responsive. And, generally within an hour, no more, they're getting a response to their question. If they need help with something, or they want to know how far something is from where we are. I can see it in their responses that they don't get that speedy response from other hosts. And when they get it, they're more likely to book with us just because of the speed and how delightful the interaction can be.
Right.
So I think that's one aspect of having a good product as well. And then knowing when they're here, if something comes up that we're on it, we'll take care of it right away, and things will happen. There's no way around that. And so, we're just being responsive to that, I think, has been essential.
Right, that's cool. So I'm gonna answer a couple of these questions. Joe says, are these individually metered?
They are.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. And the reason why you wanted to get them individually metered was?
One, it allowed us the flexibility with the property. So if we did want to go to long term, we have the ability to do that with ease. The second aspect, which even more so during the pandemic, was making sure everyone control their own climate, their air conditioning, their heat. People are funny about that. They want that. They want their own internet. They don't want anything shared. And there's certainly properties where they do have shared amenities like that. But the majority of people are looking for something that they feel is private and its own, and they're not bothered. They don't have to worry about controlling or someone else regulating their heat, et cetera. So I think it's beneficial to have as much as you can separate. I think it works better for your product.
That's good. That's good. Chantel J asked, do you do construction in Richmond? I know the answer to this question.
I'll go anywhere for the price. Nah, that may be a little bit out of my little territory range here, but I won't say never.
Right. Depends on what you're building, right?
Right.
Ms. Newton, financing, is he simply applying for a mortgage in a classic investment property scenario? So let me kind of break that down for you. So he talked about it a little earlier. So say you're buying a property for $1 million, right? And you got $250,000 worth of renovation costs, right? So the bank's going to look at $1.25 million, and they're going to make you put down between 20 and 25% of that total amount, right? And then you can finance the rest. And then what they give you is a construction loan. So you got to, it's just basically like your contractor is going to give, receipts at certain benchmarks. You do have to have money up front in those scenarios because you got to get the train rolling. Like, you got to get your people working. So I would tell you, when you're in a construction loan situation, Willie, what do you have as far as cash reserves? About 10 to 20% to get the train running so you can get reimbursements later down the line?
Yeah, and it's important, if you do have a construction loan, those loans are set up in a draw basis. So as Alan just said, you got to put money up out front, and once you get to a certain point of completion, the bank will refund you. So they're not giving you anything up front. So you got to be able to start the train, as you said. And the beauty is you can set those milestones. So you can say, hey, when I get to this point during the renovation, the bank, obviously you have inspections with your county or whatever jurisdiction you're in. The bank has their own inspectors too. So they'll come out and, they really trust what I say, but no, they're bringing their own person out, and they'll say, hey, this is what we see. This is how much we believe they've done. And here's the value of that. And that'll be what they send you. So understanding that and understanding your spend versus the draw you take and balancing that will be important as you, work through a construction loan.
Gotcha. What's your next question? What's your average turnover cost?
For a Airbnb rental turnover?
Correct.
So it's an interesting question. So obviously the cleaning costs we pass on to the guest. We do, obviously there's things that break and we have to fix in every turnover, hopefully not every turnover. But just like you would in a long-term rental, you would expect 1% of the value of the property to be held in reserves for maintenance and fixes and breaks, or $1 a square foot. You can look at it either way. So that's typically how I look at it. That's the money that we keep in reserve to fix things that break throughout the period.
Got you. Got you. All right. So let's talk about Airbnb fees. Pete Gore. Pete was at he was at the seminar when you first bought the building, when we were walking through gutted. Pete, what up? So he asked, what are Airbnb fees?
Okay. Good question. So there's two sets of fees. There's a fee for the host and there's a fee for the guest. So host fees right now are 3%. So that's 3% of whatever nightly fees that we bring in. And the guests will pay anywhere between 3 and 20%. And that's a separate fee that goes to Airbnb. It doesn't come through me as the host. And so what I receive, Airbnb collects all the payments. And then a day after people check in, then they release the money to me for nightly stay. So if you stay 3 nights, I get 3 nights lodging minus 3% of that cost and the cleaning fee. And that's what I would bring in.
Got you. Got you. Okay. What he also asked, what is your budgeted furnishing replacement? Like when you're thinking about this, one of these units or maybe one of these buildings, how much are you budgeting over to the side for replacing furnishings and things like that? So these properties were gutted. So they had new HVACs, windows, roofs, everything was new, electrical, plumbing runs. So a lot of that upfront stuff was done up front. And I would encourage you, if you are going to do an Airbnb, go do all of those major things up front, because the last thing you want is that thing to break when those people move into your place. And it's likely to break when they move in more than when you live in there, if you have lived in there before, because they just live in these places different. And we'll get to those stories in a second. But talk to me about, like, what are you budgeting? You've owned these buildings for about 5 years now, is that right?
Yeah. The first one about 5 and 4 for the next one. Yes.
Right. So how are you budgeting your furnishing replacement costs?
So we budget about $500 a unit for the year. Major things like we have pull-out sleeper couches. They're nicer. And for once, I got the warranty on them. And those are the things that you want to get the warranty. You want to get if they tear the upholstery, you can get that fixed. How fast they come is a whole different thing. But we did have one that broke. It took them a while, but they replaced it, the whole thing for free. They came and got it, took another one. So, where it cost us another $2,500, we got that for free. Right. And we've had to replace chairs, dishes. I can count on my hand how many glasses I've broken in my life. And that happens in a week here. I don't know if the glasses here are that much slipperier here than anywhere else, but I get nuts all the time. And these are the ones that people tell me. So silverware disappears, glasses break, I'll look in the cabinet and all the coffee mugs are gone. And typically they'll break them and they'll throw them away and not tell you. So, plan to replace those linens, the towels and sheets. We do have to replace those, usually in a 6-month time frame. We can get longer than that, great, but we kind of budget for, them to run their course in about 6 months.
I got you. All right, last question from Pete. And guys, what I would love for you guys to do is tell me one thing that you learned so far, or one aha, put it in the chat. One thing, one aha, one thing that you've learned, put it in the chat. And then Willie, I'm gonna ask you this last question just about this, and we'll kind of finish up here. Give me 2 numbers. Give me the occupancy rate that you've seen pre and post COVID, right? Any changes? And then second, If you were to rent these out if you were to rent these out full time, how much more do you think you're making by doing an Airbnb?
Okay. So it was interesting once we fully got up to full speed in 2 buildings, across those 8 units, we were flying high and the pandemic hit. So we were probably I think when we did the math, it says, hey, if to go to a short-term rental, we were to get 65% occupancy, we were doing good. We were doing far better than a long-term rental. We probably yielded 80%, if not higher. And so that was great. Now, COVID hit, and when was that? February, March?
March.
And honestly, we were already booked through the summer, solid. And everybody canceled, everybody. And so there were about 3 weeks where it was dark. It was dark. And then trickle by trickle, there were people where we have a 2-night minimum, that were looking for 2 months, and they couldn't find it because it was never available. And there were people who were stuck and couldn't go anywhere or couldn't get back out the country. And so all those people who were looking for longer term stays were able to book those places. So 2 months, 3 months. I had one guy who was doing construction at Reagan Airport. He ended up staying a year. And so you can set those limits on how, your minimums for stays, and it will dictate the type of client that you end up bringing in. But it opened up, at least in my eyes, that there were still other people out there who still needed and were looking for furnished places. Now, what the pandemic did, it dramatically shifted inventory. And so those who were doing it casually or not doing it full time or were renting out, parts of their house, they stopped or took a pause. And so inventory dropped, and the demand and the prices were going up. And so where we dropped a little bit in 2020 as that result, or I'm sorry, 2019 and 2020, we actually were higher than the pre-pandemic numbers. So we were actually yielding 85% occupancy. The majority of that started with weekends. I mean, everyone who was stuck in the house wanted somewhere to go for the weekend and just get away from wherever they were. And if they could drive there, that'd be fantastic. So the demand and the rates for weekends just went up, and they've stayed up. And that slowly trickled back and people working remotely. And says, oh, if I can go here, I'm comfortable. I have strong internet and I can work remotely, whatever the case is. I don't need to be where home is. And so that's driven a lot of demand. And so hopefully, we'll ride that wave as long as we can. But like I said, the demand post pandemic has been stronger than before.
Tell me what a couple of guys talking about the numbers. Nigel's asking him, is it worth it? Chris Fleming's asking about the ROI, and Pete. These all like a couple of these guys are my clients, so I know
they want real numbers.
all about the numbers. They were the guys like, tell me the numbers. I'll figure out the house. So tell me the percentage. So if you were to rent this out long term versus you doing short term, how much more do you think you're making renting it out short term?
For 2020, we yielded 85% more than we would have with a long-term rental.
And does that include your management fee?
Yeah. And so, to put that in perspective, if you're renting the place for $1,000 a month short term, we're able to get over 2,000 or 2,000, close to 2,000 a month in a short-term rental. And so real numbers for us, these places, would yield, $1,800, $1,850 a month. And so we do north of 3,000 a month per unit, with short-term rental. A lot of work that comes with it, don't get me wrong. But when you net it all out, yes, the juice is worth the squeeze, if I have that analogy right. So it can yield you a lot more cash flow per month.
Yeah, it would only be worth it if you were netting that much more in cash flow. Yeah, I would say if you were getting 40% or less, I'm not sure it would be worth the squeeze. But anytime you're approaching those numbers, if you have the time and you have the dollar sitting, it is a wonderful, wonderful model, right? Last time we did a model with a young guy who he kind of did a little bit of something different. This is a different model. So during our wealth building series, guys, each month we're going to show you something different for you to think about. This might not be exactly what you do, right? But you may be able to pick some things up off of what Willie does to apply to your investment model. Okay. All right. So let's get to the fun stuff. And we're going to end this up with some fun stuff. Tell me some crazy stories, Willie. Tell me some, because you get.
It's a family panel here. No.
Hey, no kids on here. Y'all, are y'all's kids? Are y'all's kids?
No.
So tell me some crazy stories, man. Just tell me some. Let's not scare nobody, but let's give me the real deal.
Oh no, I won't scare you. There are oh man, there's so many stories in terms of as much as you want. I realize it's not expecting people to treat your property the way they treat their own, because some people are nasty. So you want them to treat it the way you would treat your property. And and you got to get the mindset that not everyone's going to do that. And so you got to separate yourself. So certainly if you're renting out your own home, or it's your first rental property that used to be your house, you got to separate the mindset. It's not your home anymore. This is your investment property, and people are going to treat it that way. So the nicer you have it, the nicer they typically try to keep it, but there's just some people that just aren't built that way. And so we have, obviously, yeah, we get a couple parties. Yeah, I've had to throw out a couple people. I have one in my property in Old Town where a guy rented out the property for the weekend, and one of my neighbors who calls me and said, hey, they know what I do at the property, and they're fine with it. And so I don't hide that aspect, but I do tell people, hey, if you're outside, if you're having a cigarette, if you're loud, if it's late, bring it inside. So they were a little loud, and obviously they had a party, and I don't sanction parties. So obviously I want you to enjoy the space, but you can keep containing. I don't have to hear about it, no worries. But so I go over there, and I'm expecting a handful of guys or whatever the case is, and I knock on the door, and I must have seen 30 dudes dressed in drag and wigs and dresses. And this guy comes out the door, and I said, you got to come outside. So he comes out, and literally I'm trying to have this serious conversation. He's got this Donna Summer type wig on, like down to his knees. And I was like, I can't even look at you right now and have this serious conversation of, you got to stop this party. And finally they left. I don't know where they went. But when we went to clean that place, I mean, there was wig hair everywhere. And I was not prepared to see what I saw when they opened that door. So I don't want to scare you about the parties, but know that they can happen. You just got to have, and I'm very clear. It says, all right, if I find out as a party, if you're breaking my noise rules, and I have to get out of my bed, it's a wrap. It's done. You're out. It's gone. Don't ask for a refund. And so far they've been pretty good with that. And there's like I said, I want people to enjoy themselves. Some people enjoy themselves a little too much. I grew an appreciation for those who have to clean hotels. I just leave it at that. I'm sorry. So we see it all. Some people are very clean, some are absolutely not. And so you just got to be thick-skinned about it. As long as they didn't break anything, it can all be clean. And we're very, very thorough about that. So, if you partake in this in any full-time capacity, expect that, if you're going to be, sharing a space or an additional unit in your home or somewhere else, just expect, those type of things. Even long-term rentals, people abuse your property, but it can be pretty hectic in a short-term rental and the type of turnover that we're yielding.
That's dope. That's dope. You want to share any more stories?
I could go on and on. So I mean, another thing is it's people leave stuff behind often, and I try my best. If it's something value, if they lost, I'll ask them. But I stopped chasing people down. I realized I left stuff at hotels before. They've never chased me down to get my stuff back to me, and so I stopped. You leave it if you really want it. If you realize you lost it, you'll reach out to me, and I'll send stuff back to you. But make sure you get the postage before you send it, because you send it, there's no reason for them to pay you, and the it's just interesting the stuff people leave behind. I had people that stayed for a couple months, and I kept getting these packages, and they were out of the country. There was no way for me to reach them, and I hadn't opened the package. I let them sit for a while, and then someone opened one up, and come to find out, the items that were in this packages, and these were, I'll say, of an adult nature. And then I went and I said, let me look in these other boxes. And I was blown away. I'm like, why are these things being sent to this property? And why were these people doing this? So, like I said, you get a slice of society, you'll see everything. It can be fun, it can be rewarding, entertaining, but just know, with that comes a slice of society.
Yeah, I think the one thing I got out of this is an ultra investment property, guys. Like, this is an ultra investment property. So if you really think about it, if you don't have the appetite for a long-term rental property, and I really think, and I'm gonna answer this question for you, Willie, and I'll answer the way I want to answer. You can answer the way you want to answer it. If you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing about this real estate journey, what would it be? Is start with a simple investment property first, right? I don't know if I would jump straight into a short-term rental property, right? I would get my druthers, kind of figure out what's going on with a long-term rental property, really feel like if my palate is there. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, then you perhaps go to the next, to this route, right? Or maybe instead of buying a 4-unit, you buy a vacation rental property, right? Where it's just one person and it's away from you, and emotionally you're not attached to it, because if you have any emotional attachment to these properties, your emotions are going to get crushed. It just is what it is, man. These buildings are beautiful. I remember when I walked in, I was like, oh man, these are great. These are nice. Well, they ain't so nice when someone is moving out, right? So you got to make sure that emotionally you're not attached. Willie, if you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing about this real estate journey, what would it be?
I would say, I think based on what you said, I kind of did it right and kind of moved to it slowly, where the yearning in me wanted to do it faster, get more, build it faster, get more money faster, etc. But I think methodically, adding a property every year or so allowed me to mature and build my repertoire to a point when we did get these multifamilies, I had the resources to react quickly to fix a problem in a 4-hour period, like it never happened. And, things like we always talk about, the AC doesn't break until it's the hottest day and it's a Sunday evening. And do you have someone to come fix your AC? Because you got someone coming in the next day. And, you've got to be able to do that quickly, or at least have, the resources to fix a plumbing, electrical issue, whatever the case is, quickly, because there's still a toss-up between what's more important, air conditioning or the internet. And the older clients, they gotta have AC. These young ones, they don't mind being hot, but that internet better work, because I gotta stream whatever it is I'm streaming, or it's a big problem. So keep those two things. You take anything away today, air conditioning and internet are key things that guests need to have.
Yes, need to have. That's awesome. That's awesome. Guys, we're ending this up. Any questions that you have for Willie, go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to share Willie's information. Willie, you had a couple people that asked if you would be open to managing Airbnbs in DC and Virginia, stuff like that. So I want to put Willie's information here on the screen. Can you guys see Willie's information on the screen? Just let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Yes, Crystal says you can see it. Awesome. All right. Any questions? Any questions for Willie? Any questions for Willie? Willie, you're acquiring one. You bought one more property, didn't you?
Yes. We're in the process of starting the architectural design to create additional units in a multifamily building. So looking to get at least 4 more units online. So hopefully if all goes well, we'll have that hopefully online by the end of the summer.
That's cool. And I'm gonna ask you a favor. I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Would you do a on-site like seminar like we did on the last one, like for people who perhaps were on this call? Would you be open to doing that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I think in certain phases, see how the renovation and construction shifts by creating a multifamily or a short-term rental. Little simple things like, your thoughts on closet space can change based on you got someone who's bringing a suitcase to stay 3 to 5 days versus someone who's putting everything they own for a year. And so, making those trade-offs in how you design your space, or key things that you go into, the mindset of how you plan the space for a short-term rental. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to do that, some before and after as well.
Awesome. Cool. All right, guys. If you have not gotten a copy of 50 Things Your Real Estate Agent Should Tell You But Probably Won't, you tripping. Right? This book is written by yours truly, number one. Number two, it's a lot of real estate game. If anyone's read this book, can you put some comments about the book in the chat real quick, just so people can understand? Like, this book was written really from a buyer, seller, investor, and landlord. And there are a lot of things that you can learn, right, from this book. And I always say, this will not answer all your questions, but this will allow you to comfortably find the next question that you should ask to get real estate smarter, right? So I'll repeat that. This book, it wasn't intended to answer all your questions, but it was intended to make you think smarter so you know what the next best question to ask is, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller, whether you're an investor, whether you're a realtor. This is a lot of real estate game, man. And you can go on Amazon and pick it up. If you read it and you haven't given a 5-star review, please do that, because all the proceeds go to our foundation, our Be a Blessing Foundation, which mentors 4th and 5th grade boys in Title I schools. Okay. And last but not least, send us a referral. If you got any value out of this, the best way you can say thank you, the best way you can show your appreciation is to say, hey, I know a great real estate team that's doing dynamic things. If you send us a referral, we obviously will send you a free book, a free autographed book, 50 Things Your Real Estate Agent Should Tell You But Probably Won't. We are a people relationship-based business, right? So any person that you send us, you know how we're going to treat them, and only send us cool people. Don't send us any whack people, man. You send the whack people to your other agents, right? But the cool people, the people who would value having a relationship like this, us teaching them more than just buying or selling a house, we would love those referrals. All right. So our next seminar is going to be race and real estate. Where are we now? I happen to be one of the only, if you look at the top 50 Northern Virginia real estate agents, I am the only one that's Black on that list, right? And there are a lot of stories that I have. I've got Keller Williams, head of diversity and inclusion, coming on to speak a little bit more about race and real estate and how that plays out. And we're just gonna have a real frank conversation about some things that I don't think people really know about my journey and really know about all the things that I had to go through to get where I'm at. So, know when you're supporting us, you're supporting someone who's still blazing a lot of trails, right? Blazing a whole lot of trails. And I understand that that's what I'm supposed to do, but it ain't easy. All right. So I think that's it, guys. Any more questions, Willie, you see out there you want to answer?
I saw one question
Okay.
pop in. It's a simple question, but a good question. Someone asked about the TV. Do we provide cable, regular TV, or just streaming? And I've seen places that do one or the other. I think it's important to have both. You do have clients who don't stream, don't know nothing about it, hate it, who just want to turn the news on, see something regular. Then you got some that come in, they unplug your TV and they stream all types of stuff. So yes, I think it's beneficial to have both, and we designed the places so that we had traditional cable model streaming ability. We also even have for those who need secure type internet where they have to plug in, they can't do work over Wi-Fi. In some cases, they have the ability to connect in through Ethernet. So we try to tackle all bases with how we design the spaces.
Okay. Nigel James asks, have you done any 1031 tax-free exchanges to do this? No. These are extremely complicated deals to come across, and they're very rare. And we haven't been able to line up perfectly selling a property and buying a property. And if you know me and you know Willie, we like holding properties, man. We love holding properties. I flat out, I think before, in fact, I think we both intentionally just sold properties before we started buying multifamilies, paid our capital gains, and knew that we were going to go into this with a little bit more intentionality. So we haven't been able to sync it up properly. Doesn't mean that you can't sync it up properly. When these properties come up, they come up. You just don't. The timelines often don't line up the way like that way.
Right, and as you know, the important thing about a 1031 exchange, it has to be a like kind property, and the timing has to fit within that short window. So, you know, when you find a gem, it's not always going to line up, as Alan said. So if you can, great, but it's tough to make that move.
Yeah, make sure you got the cash available, because when these deals come, you got to run. Like from when we started conversations with the seller to when we were under contract was a matter of like 3 weeks. And you know, they wanted proof of funds, all that stuff, so they knew that we were serious buyers. What's the loan called, Mike? It's a construction loan. So guys, construction loans are different than 203Ks. So construction loans generally are given by banks like John Marshall, like Burke and Herbert, like you know, your local real estate centric banks. And I'll tell you, here's a tip. So here's a tip. Does anyone know what I'm gonna say? How do you find a real estate centric local community bank? Someone can tell me what I'm about to say, I'll send you a free book.
Guess I can't answer, huh?
No, you can't. No, you can't answer back. How do you find a real estate centric? What's the easiest way to find a real estate centric community bank? You can ask a realtor. That's a good
Ask a realtor on AJ
Team. I'm gonna send you a book just off of that alone. Google. Yep, that's okay. But I'm gonna tell you, it's even a sneakier way. They do mortgages. Okay, not sure what that means, Ms. Barnett. They do mortgages. The best way: drive around the neighborhood. You know those signs that are outside of construction. Like these banks, they always put their signs. Always put their signs outside of like, newly constructed properties. So when we're doing something in Arlington, what I did initially is I just drove around, right? I drove around and I saw the name and number of the person who was helping that person renovate that property in Arlington, and I called that person because I already knew that they knew the neighborhood. I already knew that they did those types of loans. And I already knew that when I called them with a project that would work, that they could help me think through the process because they've helped other people think through the process. So if you're in wherever you are, right, and you're thinking about like, investing in real estate, and you're thinking about doing these types of projects, drive around. I'll just take a quick snapshot. And we called our lender a year and a half before we got our first loan. We established a relationship. We asked him a bunch of questions, sent him, tax returns, asked him exactly how much we needed to make to be able to get into these projects. Found out that if we needed to have a partner, if we needed to show more income, we were just asking all those questions up front, right? So no, not all banks do these types of loans, Ms. Barnett. Bank of America, your big box banks don't do these, right? They don't do these. They'll give you a home loan, but they won't give you these types of construction loans. They just don't think that local, right? And they don't think that way. All right. So guys, thank you for your time. Willie, I appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you having me.